Mortals, welcome to the shadowed corner of existence where we peel back the curtain on life's most chilling mysteries. I'm Nathan Morris, your companion through the raw, untamed edges of life, death, and the unexplainable in between. This is where we confront the stories that linger in the dark, tales of survival that defy logic and challenge everything that we think we know. Today's episode, Veiled Rescues, 3 unexplainable near-death escapes. We're going to drag you into a vortex of true, bone-rattling encounters with the Reaper. These are 3 survivors who slipped through the death's grasp under circumstances that baffle the mind. From a forest's ghostly whisper guiding a lone crash survivor to a sea's impossible savior in the midst of wartime chaos. And a final tale, of course, the best for last, that's so profound, so unsettling, you'll want to stay until the very end. A woman pulled from a fiery inferno by a force that shouldn't exist. These are not just stories. They're windows into a realm where the impossible becomes real. Or maybe you've brushed against death's shadow yourself and you've walked away with questions that no one can answer. Hold that thought as we step into the void. Before we dive into today's haunting escapes, I want to thank you, my Incredible Mortals family. I want you to hear it, that I appreciate it, that you are a part of this journey. Your passion for these raw and real stories of survival and mystery, and my music, and my new single breakthrough, keeps me digging deeper. I'm so grateful to have you with me in this space and place where we feel a little more alive. A little less alone, even. I see each message, each shared story. That fuels my drive, and it keeps me going. I'm thrilled to bring you these 3 stories that will leave you pondering long after the silence falls. Let's keep unraveling the unknown together here. I want you to know new episodes drop every week, so if you're hooked on stories that grip your soul and refuse to let go, mark your calendar, set a reminder, carve it into a creepy old tree, tie a string around your finger, whatever keeps you tethered to us. And if you haven't hit follow yet, now's your chance. Go ahead, click it. Otherwise, rumor has it, you'll end up at a late night campfire, only to discover you've stumbled into a gathering of urban legend enthusiasts who roped you into a week-long quest to find a cursed artifact in the nearest haunted woods. Don't get lost in that plot twist. Don't make me tell you this scenario again. Hit follow and stay with us. Okay, let's embark on these incredible stories of survival. Our first story transports us to the dense, unforgiving Amazon rainforest of Peru on a fateful Christmas Eve in 1971. Juliane Koepcke, a 17-year-old German-Peruvian student with a shy demeanor and a love for biology, was aboard Lanza Flight 508 alongside her mother, Maria. They were flying from Lima, a small city nestled deep in the jungle, is where they were headed to spend the holidays with her father at a remote research station. The flight was a short hop, just over an hour, and Juliane gazed out the window of the Lockheed Electra, marveling at the endless sea of green below, a landscape both beautiful and menacing. There's something about being on a plane during the holidays, that blend of excitement for family reunions mixed with the subtle tension of turbulent skies. "This is your captain. Please put on your seatbelt." That was Juliane, seated near the back in row 19, clutching a small gift for her father, unaware that the heavens were about to unleash a nightmare. It was around noon, just 30 minutes from their destination, when the air turned hostile. The plane, carrying 92 souls, entered a violent thunderstorm over the Amazon. Dark clouds swallowed the light, and turbulence shook the cabin like a child's toy. Passengers gripped their armrests as lightning flashed outside, illuminating the terror on their faces. Juliane's mother, a seasoned traveler, squeezed her daughter's hand, murmuring reassurances, but the dread was palpable. Then, at 12:36 p.m., a bolt of lightning struck the right wing, igniting a fuel tank with a deafening roar. The aircraft disintegrated midair at 10,000 feet, tearing apart in a chaos of metal and flame. Juliane, still strapped to her seat, was hurled out of the void, the jungle rushing up to meet her as she plummeted through the storm. Debris rained around her, suitcases, seats, fragments of lives, while the wind screamed in her ears. She blacked out mid-fall, her body a rag doll among the treetops, branches clawing at her flesh as she crashed into the forest floor with a sickening thud. When Juliane awoke hours later, the world was a blur of pain and silence. She laid tangled in undergrowth, her left collarbone shattered, a deep gash on her arm oozing blood, and one eye was swollen shut from the impact. Her glasses were gone, her vision impaired, and her mother, along with the other 91 passengers and crew, was nowhere to be seen. She was utterly alone in one of the most hostile environments on Earth. A 17-year-old girl surrounded by a labyrinth of green that swallowed sound and hope. The jungle pulsed with unseen threats, jaguars, venomous snakes, and insects that could kill with one bite. Her only possessions were the torn summer dress on her back and a single shoe. With no food, no water, and injuries that throbbed every breath, survival seemed a cruel joke. Days dragged on in a haze of agony and desperation. Juliane, drawing on survival tips her biologist parents had taught her, knew she had to find water to navigate out. She stumbled upon a small stream and followed its course, hoping it led to a river and, eventually, civilization. She waded through leech-infested mud, her bare foot cut by sharp roots, while her stomach gnawed with hunger. She scavenged candy scraps from her pocket, sucking on them for fleeting energy, and sipped murky water from rainfall. Flies buzzed around her wounds, laying eggs in her gashes, and infection set in, her arm swelling with pus. And by day 5, her strength was a fading ember, her mind teetering on the edge of surrender. Then, in the oppressive heat of day 7, something inexplicable pierced her fog. She later recounted in her memoir, "When I fell from the sky, that a sensation, not a voice, but a distinct pull like a tether in her chest, urged her onward, whispering a silent command to keep moving, follow the water." It wasn't her thought. It carried a strange calm, though, a certainty that defied her despair. Each time she faltered, nearly collapsing into the underbrush, that unexplainable nudge returned, guiding her step after step through the endless maze. On day 11, January 3rd, 1972, after trekking over 10 miles through the Amazon, Juliane's battered body could barely stand. Her vision swam, her limbs trembled, but that invisible pull led her to a faint path by the stream, a sign of human presence. She staggered forward, collapsing near a small lumber camp along the Shabonia River. Loggers found her, skeletal and delirious, her skin a map of cuts and insect bites, and rushed her to a nearby village for help. She was the sole survivor of Lancet Flight 508, a miracle doctors couldn't fathom. Her injuries, broken bones, severe dehydration, infected wounds, should have claimed her long before rescue. 2012, there was an interview with The Guardian, and Juliane reflected, "Something kept me going. I felt a presence, even when I was alone. Maybe it was sheer will, a guardian woven into the jungle's ancient heart. Maybe her mother's spirit, refusing to let her fail and fall. Her survival carved a path through impossibility, a testament to a force no map could chart, leaving us to wonder what truly walked with her through that green abyss." Juliane Koepcke's journey through that jungle nightmare is a story that claws at your mind. An invisible tether pulling her through a wilderness bent on her destruction. It sparks questions about the unseen currents that steer us from ruin. And don't worry, I've got 2 more eerie rescues ahead, each unraveling stranger threads of the unknown, including one that's so profound it's going to shift your perspective on fate itself. So stay with me for it. If a moment of unexplainable guidance has ever touched your life, I want to hear about it. Join the Mortals community via the link in the description to share your story. And before we sail into our next tale, I'm excited to share with you that we just launched some new merch for the Mortals. The Hello, I'm Probably Anxious tee, for instance. It's honestly some of the best merch, and it's the best way to support this podcast and my music. I would love for you to dive into the collection of tees and hoodies and mugs. Each is designed for you to wear, enjoy, and spread a little kindness and love, not the gross stuff. Every purchase directly fuels my mission to uncover not only these mysteries, but to express kindness, because that matters. It's how you can keep this journey, the mortals, alive. Head over to nathanmorrismusic.com or click the link in the description to grab yours now. And of course, when you join the Mortals community, you get major discounts on all the merch I'm talking about right now. Your support means everything to me. Let's drift into our next unexplainable escape. Our second story sweeps us into the vast, merciless expanse of the Atlantic Ocean during the darkest days of World War II. On November 23, 1942, Poon Lim, a 24-year-old Chinese sailor with a wiry frame and a stoic resolve, served as a second steward aboard the SS Ben Lomond, a British merchant ship hauling vital supplies from Cape Town across a war-torn sea. Poon was a man of quiet endurance, accustomed to the relentless roll of waves and the ever-present threat of enemy submarines, sending every hard-earned penny back to his family in Hainan. There's a certain weight to that kind of life, laboring through danger far from home, tethered to loved ones by fragile hope. That was Poon. Wiping down tables in the mess hall below deck, his thoughts would drift to his mother's smile. And one day, in a moment just like this, the ocean bared its fangs. At 1 p.m., as the Ben Lomond steamed through choppy waters off the coast of Brazil, a German U-boat, U-172, lurking beneath the surface, locked onto its target. 2 torpedoes tore into the ship's hull with a thunderous explosion, splitting steel and igniting a fireball that consumed the deck in seconds. The vessel began to sink, tilting violently as waters roared through shattered compartments. Jolted from his routine, stumbled through smoke and chaos, the screams of his 53 crewmates echoing as the ship buckled beneath them. There was no time for lifeboats. The Ben Lomond vanished under the waves in under 2 minutes, dragging all but one soul into the abyss. Poon, by sheer instinct, grabbed a life jacket from a rack and leapt into the sea just as the deck submerged, the icy water biting into his skin. Oil slicks and debris surrounded him, the last cries of his comrades fading into an oppressive silence. He floated for hours, battered by waves under a merciless sun, until he spotted a small wooden life raft, a flimsy craft meant for 8, now his solitary fortress. He hauled himself aboard, finding a meager stash, a jug of water, a tin of biscuits, a few chocolate bars, and a flare gun. But with currents pulling at 8 knots, he was adrift in the middle of nowhere, a speck lost in an endless gray expanse. Days stretched into weeks, each sunrise a cruel reminder of his isolation. Poon rationed his water to mere sips, stretching the jug over days until it ran dry. His throat was raw with thirst by this point. He ate the biscuits crumb by crumb, then turned to raw fish, crafting a hook from a wire on the raft and using bird flesh as bait when gulls dared to land. Sharks prowled below. Their fins would slice through the surface like grim sentinels waiting for his strength to just fail. He fashioned a canopy from his shirt to shield against the blistering sun, but salt sores etched into his skin, and his body withered, ribs jutting beneath taut flesh. By week 4, after nearly a month adrift, his mind began to fray, haunted by visions of his family waving from a shore he couldn't reach. Then, on what he later counted as day 30, as despair threatened to drown him, something inexplicable pierced the haze. In a 1943 interview with the New York Times, Poon described a sensation, a heavy, formless shadow over the raft. And it wasn't cast by a cloud or a bird, but it was a presence, accompanied by a sudden, unshakable certainty. Hold on, help is near. But it wasn't a sound, it was a weight in his chest, a command from nowhere that steadied his trembling hands. Against all reason, that night, he fired his last flare into the empty dark, guided by this strange, urgent pull. though no ship glimmered on the horizon. On April 5th, 1943, 133 days after the sinking, Brazilian fishermen spotted Poon's raft bobbing off the coast near Belém, drawn by the faint glow of that final flare he shot, its light having carried across days and miles. They hauled him aboard, a living skeleton by this point, his eyes hollow but burning with a flicker of life, having drifted over 3,000 miles across the Atlantic. Doctors marveled. No one should endure such exposure and starvation, let alone remain sane. Poon, in sparse post-war accounts, credited that shadowy weight, murmuring, "Something watched over me. It knew I wasn't done." Was it a trick of a broken mind, a conjuring hope from nothing, a spirit of the sea, or the will of his lost crew refusing to let him join them? Poon Lim's record for survival at sea on a raft stood for decades, a quiet footnote in maritime history, pieced together from old news clippings and naval logs, yes, yet as I trace his impossible journey, I stay stuck by the enigma of what steadied him in that final desperate act. A veiled rescue from an ocean vast enough to swallow all trace of a man, yet not him, not Poon. Poon Lim's odyssey across that merciless ocean, it's a tale that seeps into your thoughts. A formless shadow, an unexplainable certainty anchoring him when the waves sought to claim him. It stirs questions about what lies beyond our sight, guarding us, guiding us against oblivion. I have one final story ahead, the most profound, a narrative so layered with mystery it'll reshape how you see the boundary between life and death. If a moment of unexplainable intervention has ever crossed your path, I want to hear about it. Join the Mortals community via the link in the description. Share your story. Real quick, I just want to put you onto something that completely leveled up how I create. If you've ever thought about starting a podcast or even creating content that looks good and sounds next level, but you say, "I don't have the equipment," Descript. And it just dropped something ridiculously wild. It's AI avatars. Say you're terrible in front of a camera, but just imagine being able to generate a video where you read the script, but you don't hit record. You write it. Descript makes it look like it's you saying it, and it looks really good. It doesn't look awkward, not robotic, it's seamless. If you pair that with what Descript already does with helping me with my podcast, editing with text-based, and if you're creating anything, a podcast or content for socials, or even you're just making videos, do not sleep on this. Go to get.descript.com/Nathan Morris to try it for free right now. That's get.descript.com/Nathan Morris. Link is also in the description. Now, back to the Mortals. If these stories have you anxious, then you're going to love my brand new merch. Hello, I'm probably anxious. A tee that is screaming humor, but also offering an opportunity for a conversation. It's something we should talk about. Check your friend's pulse. Proceeds also benefit the Lifeline 988 in the United States. Link in the description. Visit nathanmorrismusic.com. Our final story, the one that I've been leading you toward, the dangling carrot, carries us to the industrial pulse of Chicago on a bitter, cold December evening in 1903. Mary Leach, a 28-year-old Irish immigrant with weary hands and a fierce heart, was a seamstress, scraping by as a single mother to her young daughter, Annie. She worked grueling shifts at the Iroquois Theater, a grand new venue on Randolph Street, touted as absolutely fireproof with its marble facades and plush velvet seats. Mary spent her days backstage, stitching costumes for pennies under flickering gas lamps, her fingers raw from endless needle pricks, her back aching from hours bent over fabric. There's a certain quiet resolve in that kind of toil, pushing through exhaustion in a place that promises safety, just to keep a flicker of warmth in your child's life. That was Mary on December 30th, 1903. Lingering late in the theater's dim wings during a sold-out matinee of Mr. Bluebeard, a whimsical musical comedy drawing over 1,700 holiday-goers, mostly women and children, to the opulent auditorium. The air buzzed with laughter and anticipation, but beneath the glittering chandeliers, a silent catastrophe was brewing, one that would sear its mark into history as the deadliest single-building fire in the U.S. claiming hundreds in mere minutes. Only a force beyond comprehension would carve Mary's path out of that inferno. It was around 3:15 p.m., midway through the second act, as a jaunty song filled the theater. Mary, backstage, adjusted a dancer's costume, her mind drifting to Annie waiting at a neighbor's home, when a faint whiff of smoke caught her attention. She glances up, seeing nothing, but unease prickled her skin. On stage, a spark from an arc light, meant to dazzle with moonlit effects, leapt to a velvet curtain, igniting it with a whisper that grew into a roar. Within seconds, flames devoured the flimsy scenery, racing across painted backdrops soaked in flammable oils. The audience's laughter turned into shrieks as fire leapt to the auditorium, smoke billowing in choking waves. Mary dropped her needle, her heart slamming as the backstage crew shouted in panic. The fire escape was a bottleneck of desperate bodies. She was herded into a narrow hallway, the heat searing her face, embers catching on her worn dress. Over 600 souls would perish in the Iroquois theater fire, suffocated by toxic fumes, trampled in stampedes, or burned alive as locked exits and inward opening doors trapped them in a death trap. Mary, caught in a crush of terrified workers, felt her breath falter. The world began dimming as blackness filled her lungs. Then, amid the chaos, something impossible sliced through the terror. As she stumbled, pressed against a scorching wall, a sensation gripped her, not a thought of her own, but a visceral force, like a cold, unyielding hand clamping her shoulder. With it came this piercing clarity, an instruction that wasn't spoken, yet rang undeniable in her mind. Turn back. It carried a weight that she couldn't ignore, a command from beyond her fraying senses, pulling her against the tide of bodies surging toward doom. And she later recounted to a Chicago Tribune reporter in 1904 that it felt alien, urgent, as if something refused to let her fall. Gasping, she twisted against the crowd's momentum, clawing her way backward through the suffocating haze, driven by this phantom insistence. Her hands fumbled along the wall, finding a side stairwell that she hadn't noticed in her panic, its iron railing hot but passable. Smoke blinded her, screams deafened her, yet that unexplainable pull steered her downward, step by searing step, as timber groaned and collapsed in her wake. She burst onto Randolph Street through a service door, collapsing into the icy air. Her skin singed, her lungs raw, but her pulse still beating. Outside, the theater had become a hellscape. Flames licking the sky, survivors staggering from the wreckage, and the wails of the trapped echoing through the winter dusk. Firefighters dragged Mary to safety among a dwindling handful of backstage escapees. Her survival a statistical anomaly. Most of her fellow workers perished, crushed or consumed within minutes. The Iroquois claimed 602 lives that day, a toll of unimaginable loss. Yet Mary stood among the living, her dress charred, her hands trembling as she whispered Annie's name. In a hospital bed, wrapped in bandages, she confided to a relief worker, "Something took hold of me. It wasn't of this world. I owe my life." Was it a surge of primal instinct, a spectral guardian born of the theater's doomed souls, a force older than the city itself reaching through the flames? Her account, tucked into coroner reports and local archives like the Chicago History Museum's records, isn't name etched in public memory. Isn't a name etched in public memory amid the disaster scale. Yet, as I linger on her words, I'm drawn to the enigma of what seized her in that fiery trap, a veiled rescue so otherworldly it stands as a beacon against oblivion, daring us to ponder what truly walked through the inferno to claim her from death's roster. Mary Leach's escape from that blazing nightmare, alongside Juliane Koepcke's and Poon Lim's, leaves you grappling with the unseen. What reaches out when death's shadow falls heaviest? 3 near-death rescues, 3 unexplainable interventions, each a thread into the tapestry of mystery that we weave here on The Mortals. They expose our vulnerability, yet I feel it ignites a wonder at the forces that might guard us in our bleakest moments. If there's a brush with the unexplainable that you've ever experienced, a moment where something beyond reason pulled you through, I want to hear it. Join the Mortals community, link in the description. Your story could be the spark that lights someone else's darkness, or the next tale we unravel together. Quick note, my new single, Breakthrough, drops June 27th. It's a song for anyone who's ever faced the impossible and who's kept pushing, much like the survivors that we've met today. You can pre-save it now with a link in the description, and I would love it if you streamed my existing releases anywhere you listen to music. Link is in the description. 9,000 streams equal one merch purchase. Grab your hello, I'm probably anxious tees right now. NathanMorrisMusic.com. Thanks for listening to The Mortals. Until next time, remember, you're loved far more than you could ever know. Take care of yourselves.